Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be taking a first look at the all-new RG Cube by LITNXT. This is a compact flagship handheld, powerful enough to play GameCube, 3DS, PS2, and more. We'll be discussing how it feels to play on the RG Cube, the controls, some of the pros and cons of a square screen, the drama around the launch of this handheld, and more. We have a lot to unpack, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. The very first thing I want to say is props to LITNXT for giving this handheld the perfect name, the RG Cube. It's got a square screen, it's basically a portable GameCube. It just makes perfect sense and is so much better than their typical naming conventions. I'm so happy this is not the RG557XX or the RG Cube. It's just a great name. This lovely white model was kindly sent over to me by my good friends over at LITNXT. So huge thank you to them for making this video possible. As always, I will leave links in the description to their store if you guys want to pick one up from them. So first impressions, when I first got my hands on the RG Cube, I knew this was something special. I could tell this is a flagship handheld. So first off, it's really comfortable. The handheld is like tall, so there's more room for your hands, and the plastic has this nice soft feel to it, and the grips on the back fit my hands like perfectly. There's also like a lot of nice attention to detail. For example, the screen is like recessed a little bit to make space for the screen protector, and there's also a nice little ring around the action buttons. The white of this unit is actually a nice off-white color. You can tell by looking at some of the controls like the joysticks or the d-pad next to the white of the shell, so it's like kind of like a two-tone white color. I also really like the texturing they've put throughout the entire device. For example, on the joysticks on like the outer ring, there's like this nice texture to it, and then the shoulder buttons and triggers is the same thing, and then over on the back where you place your hands on the grips is the same texturing. So basically everywhere you put your hands on the RG Cube, it just feels so nice. Also, big props to LITNXT for not including a transparent model. You know, the RGB lighting on this would look awful with a transparent model. As we saw with the RG556 on the blue model, the RGB just looked really bad. And in general, anything with lights, with transparency, they just don't mix well. So I'm really happy to see that all the color options for the RG Cube are solid colors. So it's nice to see LITNXT is learning, and they're just making better devices every single time. Now the screen. Of course, the biggest feature of the RG Cube is that square screen, and now I want to explain why it is so special. This is a 3.5-inch 720p touchscreen with a 1:1 aspect ratio. This has a higher pixel density than what you typically find on another retro handheld that's like 3.5-inch 640 by 480. So that comes out to roughly 228 versus 257 on the RG Cube. So what that translates to is that games will look more sharp on the RG Cube than versus other handhelds. No device is perfect at everything, but because of the square screen, the Cube excels in a lot more systems than a non-square screen. More specifically, Nintendo systems benefit from a square screen. For example, both NES and SNES were both 8x7 systems and look really good on the Cube. As you can see, 8x7 takes up the majority of the Cube screen and leaves minimal black bars on the top and bottom. Additionally, Game Boy and Game Boy Color were 10x9 systems and look really good on the Cube as well. 10x9 takes up even more space than an 8x7 system, so it looks even better on the Cube. The DS's play really well too, because you have enough vertical space to stack them portraitly, one on top of the other, like they were on original hardware, which is nice because you can see both screens at the same time, and there's no need to keep swapping between them like you would on another handheld with a smaller display. GameCube and Nintendo 64, along with your other 4x3 systems like Dreamcast and PS1 and Sega Saturn, all look really good on the Cube. As you can see, it takes up a good amount of the screen, and it's not like you're losing anything compared to like a handheld that's like a 3.5-inch 640 by 480. It takes up the exact same amount of space. Additionally, you could also move the play area up to be closer to your eyes, which is also really nice. Even Game Boy Advance, a system you wouldn't think would look good on the RG Cube, looks good in my opinion on the RG Cube. As we all know, the Game Boy Advance had a 3:2 aspect ratio screen, and surprisingly, it fits most of the screen pretty well. Yes, the black bars are getting bigger, but it still looks good. It's just one of those things of having the black bars on the top and bottom versus like you would on the left and right with a 16:9 system that just makes all the difference with the RG Cube. The only system I feel looks bad on the RG Cube is unfortunately PSP. Because of that weird aspect ratio that's very close to 16:9, it just doesn't look good and the screen's just too small for the RG Cube. And then of course there's some of those more obscure systems that I don't know how many people play, like Sega Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket Color, PC Engine, and then Pico 8, which doesn't run natively on Android, so there's that. And then of course we can't forget about Vertical Arcade. That is not obscure in my opinion. That's super fun and works really well with the joystick up top. So one really cool unique feature of Drastic is that you can make shortcuts to your favorite games right from the home menu. So for example, I have here Pokemon Soul Silver. I can just click on this and it'll launch the game right away. And as you can see, this is what it looks like to play DS on the Cube, like with screens that are the same size on the top and bottom. Anbernic has also given us this like nice little DS kind of background. You might not like it. If you don't like it, you can take it off. That's up to you. I think it's fine. And yeah, it's really nice. It almost feels like playing on the Cheese Wedge, the original 2DS. And yeah, the screens, they're kind of small, but at least you can see both of them at the same time. And if you don't like this, you can actually change it. So, okay, so let me back out of the game real quick. I'm gonna change my profile to default. And now, a really cool thing about Drastic 2 is that you can have multiple profiles. So you can have a bunch of different save slots. So now when I go back to Soul Silver and it launches, as you can see on my other profile, I have a different layout for the screen. So I can have the top screen bigger and the bottom screen smaller, which is nice too, because most of the time you're going to be focused on the top screen anyway. There's a lot of games too that, you know, utilize the top screen a lot more than the bottom screen. So this is another nice layout you can use. And here we are in Pokemon Soul Silver. You can still use the touchscreen as well, just like this, you know, do whatever you want. So yeah, you have a lot of options with Drastic, and it just has like a bunch of nice features, multiple save slots. You can change the screen layout like this. You can have different custom backgrounds too. These are just the ones that Anbernic has provided, so I've been using them. But yeah, it looks really cool, and this is a really good, I would say this is a really good DS experience. So here I'm gonna just run into the tall grass real quick into a battle for you guys. And this feels so much better than the 2DS in my opinion, just because you don't have to deal with the slider, right? That was on the 3DS and the 2DS. I always hated that slider. It's like here you don't have to use it. You have like solid controls, and you have fast forward, so you can get through games like this really easily. As we know, Pokemon Platinum had some of the longest like time to faint of any game, so having fast forward is going to be super handy for games like that. Now the RG Cube is an Android device, an Android 13 device. So yeah, Android 13, and that is a really big deal because Android gives you a lot of benefits you don't get on Linux. One of the very first things is sleep. The sleep functionality of Android is like 10 times better than on Linux. For whatever reason, you can leave this overnight and it will not lose much power at all. Second, you get access to things like Vulkan drivers, which enhance like compatibility for certain like higher end games. For example, on this GameCube emulator, let's say that for whatever reason this game is not running well, I can go into the graphics settings and swap the backend to Vulkan. So Vulkan drivers a lot of times will enhance your emulation performance, so that's not something you always get on a Linux device. So the fact that this is Android 13 is a very big deal. Another thing is you have Google Play services. You get access to the Play Store. You have you can have things like Discord. So if you love to be a social gamer, you want to talk with your friends as you're playing, you can have this running in the background, just talk to your friends. So you can be in here on a voice channel and then have this running in the background to talk to your friends while you're playing your favorite games. You know, Discord is awesome. And then on top of that, you can pretty much make your handheld look however you want. In my case, I'm running something called Nova Launcher, which is a really good launcher. It gives you a app drawer and stuff. It gives you a dock, and you can customize your icons to look however you want. I have this like nice little shape to these. I forgot what they're called, but yeah, you can make this look however you want. You have as many pages as you want. You can have this completely clear and just have your background. On top of this, like the way I use this is I have like little shortcuts to my favorite games. For example, let's say I want to play some Mario Kart 7 for 3DS. You just click this button right away and it'll launch the game directly. It saves me a lot of time, and I can do that pretty much with every emulator for the most part, minus Dolphin. For some reason I can't do it on Dolphin, but like Game Boy Color, you can do the same thing. You know, just like this, I'm right back in the game. And this to me works a lot better than just having a bunch of games on my screen, and then it just gives me like confusion. Instead, I like to just focus on a few games at a time, and I just click on the game. It'll put me right back into that game, and I can pick up where I left off. You also get access to better versions of emulators. For example, the Drastic application on Android is much better than it is on Linux. On Linux, the Drastic application, you can't customize it. You can't read any of the text or anything like that. It's just hard to get to anything. Where here on the Android version, you have like nice little icons. Everything looks good. The menus are easy to navigate. It just works as it should. So yes, you get superior versions of emulators. And there's more perks to Android too, like obviously you have access to a browser, so you can watch videos here, or you can go get your games right off the internet. You don't even need access to a PC with a handheld like this, because you can just get them off the internet. You can also use it to sideload applications that aren't on the Play Store as well, stuff like RetroArch, and that's how I got RetroArch right over here. Stuff like this is just really nice to have on Android. And then of course you also get Android games, and this is where some of the cons come in of having this square aspect ratio, right? Not every application plays nice with a square aspect ratio. Like Android developers don't typically develop with that aspect ratio in mind. It's usually 16:9 or 4:3, or like this length of a phone, like 21:9, right? Like a portrait kind of vertical, because it's Android, obviously it's meant for a phone. So not all these games will play nice, and I'm going to go into a bunch of them pretty quickly. We're going to play hit or miss. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of Android games and just kind of show what they look like, and I'll say if it's a hit, like it looks really really good on the Cube, or it's a miss, or just it doesn't work as well as it should. That way I can give you a good idea of what Android games look like on the Cube. Okay, so up first we got Dead Cells. And this is a really popular Android game. I want to start off with all the heavy hitters, and this one I'm going to say is an absolute hit because it takes up the entire portion of the screen. The only thing is the character is a bit small, but if you can move past that, it plays really well. Next we have Streets of Rage 4, another really popular Android game, and this one I'm going to say is a miss only because the aspect ratio is 16:9 and there's no option in the menu to change it. Like yes, it plays really well, however I just feel like the screen's a bit too small for my liking, but you can play Streets of Rage 4. This is what it looks like. If you can live with it, just I guess go for it. Next we have Hot Lap League. This is like a game similar to Trackmania where you're trying to beat your own record, or like the online world record. It's a really fun game, and this one is an absolute hit as well. Controls really nice, takes up the entire portion of the screen. It's just solid game. Highly recommend on the RG Cube. Check out this jump. Oof, gas. Next we have Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is the Android version, not emulated, and as you can see here, it scales to 4:3, but for some reason they move it up on the RG Cube. I think it looks pretty good. I wouldn't say it's a complete hit, but I wouldn't say it's a miss either. Up next is Minecraft, and the RG Cube, of course, is a Minecraft machine. I am happy to say that because this is a personal favorite of mine. And as you can see, Minecraft looks really good here, plays really well, scales almost perfectly. I don't know what Microsoft is doing, but I guess they knew the Cube was coming. But man, Minecraft is a joy on the RG Cube. Here we have Horizon Chase, another absolute hit. As you can see, this game takes up the entire portion of the RG Cube, and it looks really good. It's nice, vibrant, colorful, really fun arcadey racer, Horizon Chase. So this one's called Door Kickers Action Squad. It's a really fun game if you've never played it. And this one's a bit of a miss only because it's kind of glitchy. So if you look at the top and the bottom where the screen's not being utilized, as you can see, it scales to 4:3, but up top it's kind of like buggy. I don't know what the heck's going on, so it's not programmed properly. It's a little bit distracting, but it does play really well on the area it's supposed to be on. So okay, so now let's talk about these controls. So first of all, these joysticks, I really like them. These are Hall joysticks and they have this nice RGB lighting. I did want to briefly demo what you can do with these. So when I first got this, I didn't know there was more options. So I thought you could only like change them to like between these kind of different options here. I was like, oh man, you can't set it to whatever you want, which I was like, oh, it sucks. But then I realized you have to actually touch and hold it, and then in here it'll give you the actual option to change the brightness and then change like the different colors and stuff. So here I have like the foreground. When it's chasing, it's going to be red, and then it's going to be, most of the time it's going to be blue. And then you can do the same thing for everything else. So for example, just light is one color. Let's see, we can change that to something else, and then it gives you like a little RGB here. Let's see, we want to go red. Let's do all red and then press OK, and then go ahead, apply, and that's all red. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I personally really like chasing. That's what I've been using for the most part, you know, with the blue and red kind of matching the channel and stuff. And then of course you can turn it off if you don't like these lights or you find them distracting. Now, as for the joystick itself, it's a typical Anbernic joystick. They do have a program to kind of behave like a D-pad, so I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So essentially that translates to, you're not going to get like a full 3D movement. Like, see how he kind of snaps? Instead of going like very smoothly, he just goes right into that corner, into those diagonals. Instead of having a smooth 360 motion, it kind of just snaps. Which it does take some getting used to, but it's not ideal. So yeah, it's super annoying. It's not good for 3D games like this, but it is good for 2D games. In a game like this, Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, the joystick just feels right. Like, it feels actually a little bit better than using the D-pad, because the joystick basically mimics a D-pad and it just goes in those kind of directions. So I think that's where Anbernic is coming from, where they think like most people will be playing like older games, so like 2D stuff, this makes sense for 2D stuff. However, for the 3D games like GameCube and N64, Dreamcast, that sort of thing, it's just not ideal. And ideally we want Anbernic to give us an option to switch the behavior of the joystick, so we can change it on the fly, just like they have like up here where you can switch the button mode and the trigger mode. But unfortunately there's nothing for the joystick behavior. So if they added like a last option right here where they can change the joystick behavior, that would be really nice. Aside from that, the D-pad itself is actually really nice. It's different. It's not your typical Anbernic D-pad. This is like a circular kind of Sega style D-pad. It is a little bit on the firmer side, but it's by no means a bad D-pad. It's definitely just a good solid D-pad. Now, as for the other buttons, the action buttons here feel exactly like they do on the XXH or any of those. If you're familiar with those, that's how they feel. They're nice, glossy, they feel good to the touch. Now, one button I don't like on this device is the Anbernic button. So right here in the bottom left corner, you'll see an Anbernic button. And what this does, it brings you into the home launcher and into their kind of annoying launcher. So I mean, this is good for like people who like plug and play stuff, so you can just come in here, you know, pick your system, pick your game, but then when you click it again, it brings you back to like their home launcher and not my launcher. So it's kind of annoying. I wish that you could change it to be like a hotkey button. So yeah, I use Nova Launcher, and then every time I click this button and I click it again, it'll switch the home launcher. So like just like that. And now when I go back to my default apps, you'll see in here it has changed the home app to their quick step, which is like the default launcher, which is super annoying. And I wanted to stay on Nova Launcher, but you just can't do that, I guess. That's what I'm saying. Like, I prefer if you can program it to do whatever you want. Like, this would be really nice to have like as a hotkey for RetroArch, or you know, to be an additional Android function or something, but it's just not. You can't do anything about it. So, but yeah, that's about it for like the face. The shoulder buttons feel really nice. They have like a nice texture here, as you can see, and then there's like a nice texture here on the back as well. They put the volume buttons on the side and the power button, which I felt was kind of awkward. Like they had more than enough space to either move the SD card down here or put the USB-C charging port down here. Just kind of weird design choices. I feel like if I would have made the RG Cube, I would have put this down here, right? So you can dock it, and then maybe put the SD card maybe right here, headphone jack down here, and then put this power stuff on the top where it makes more sense, like you can easily touch it. And then on top of that, I wish they would have put front firing speakers. You have to deal with down firing speakers again, even though they had more than enough space to put them here. But that's Ambernick for you. Yeah, that's my only gripes. Just really wishing they went with front firing speakers, and then just kind of weird placement for this. It's not like you'll ever touch it, but I just don't prefer that, you know? I wanted to briefly touch on the drama that happened around the launch of this device that you should be aware of. So there was something that happened in the beginning with some of the initial units. A lot of them suffered from a light bleed that was caused by some screws on the inside being a little bit too tight, and some of those were sent to reviewers. So I'm gonna go ahead and put something on screen so you know what it looks like, and it's something you kind of have to look out for with this handheld, unfortunately. So if you're considering getting the RG Cube, you just want to be careful and make sure you get one from a reputable seller, a seller with a good return policy. I'm fortunate enough to have gotten one from LITNXT, and as you can see, my unit does not have any of those issues. So yeah, it's just something you want to be aware of. This is an expensive device, and you don't want to pay all this money and then receive a bad unit. It's gonna leave a bad taste in your mouth. So just please buy from a reputable seller. So yeah guys, I want to start wrapping it up here. I don't want this video to get too long. This is of course a first look at the RG Cube. There's gonna be more videos to come, and there is so much I can show you that this thing can do. Like, I'm just barely scratching the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more emulation, like PlayStation 2 and more GameCube games, and a bunch of more Android games that I kind of left out because I just didn't want to make the video too long. But I am like, I've only had this thing like 3 days now, and I really haven't even had the time to really test it like that. But so far I'm super impressed by the RG Cube, and I get it. Like, I just understand what it is, what it can do, and I really like it, especially for 3DS emulation. There hasn't been a really good way to emulate 3DS up until now. But even still, 3DS games aside, right? Having a handheld this size, this compact, this powerful, able to play what this can play, like PlayStation 2 games, GameCube, and this premium, this is for sure a flagship handheld worth your time and an easy recommendation. So yeah guys, my name is Javi. Subscribe.